Okay, so let's start by just looking at Canvas because I have all of the material set up here. Um, if I assume most of you have taken an online class. This is going to be a web enhanced class because we are getting together at least once a week, and then the rest of the work is going to be online. So there is a pretty heavy online component even though we're meeting in person. So to get to Canvas, if you've never been there before, it's worldclassroom.webster.edu. You can just Google it, Webster World Classroom, and you'll end up right here. And you just log in with your connections, login and password. I think you guys all know this, don't you? Okay, so when you log in, you want to look for the course. And I normally add that to my favorites. I have a feeling you guys have experienced this. But these are all my favorite classes because these are the ones that I'm working on right now or teaching or last term. So ours is listed as cross-listed course INTM 3050-01. I don't know what yours looks like if you're only seeing it as INTM 3050-01, but for me it's showing up as cross-listed because we made this other section for the international campuses. So you want to look for INTM 3050. Okay, let's start by looking at the syllabus. So if you just click on syllabus, I uploaded everything there. And it's kind of a bare bones syllabus. I don't have all the usual Webster stuff in it, but I figure at this point you probably know all of those things. So the class is called Information Architecture, and the description is Information Architecture refers to the structure or organization of an interactive digital experience. Students will gain a practical, historical, and theoretical introduction to the information architecture development phase of the interactive media process. We will explore ways in which areas, sections, pages relate to one another, information organization. This is terribly written, by the way. User roles as well as their goals and expectations, content definition, and navigational structures. This is just the standard course description, and I didn't write it, so don't blame me. Through hands-on projects and regular assignments, students will gain skills in creating relevant planning documents and prototypes for an interactive digital media project. So when I think about this class, I think about this class in conjunction with interface design, which is 3200. 3200 deals more with the front end, the look and feel, and this deals more with thinking about logical structures and how people are going to move their way through an interactive experience. So the visual front end part, although we'll be creating a lot of visual pieces in terms of wireframes and prototypes and site maps and some color graphic kind of choices that you'll have, that's not the main focus of this class. It's more about the architecture of a system. You'll know what the architecture of a house is, right? So the architecture, the structure of an interactive system. So the learning outcomes, I did write these, so it's my fault if they're poorly written. Upon successful completion of this course, students will be able to articulate concepts and terms pertaining to information architecture, relay the history and evolution of information architecture and why it has become a field of study. So probably your parents didn't take an information architecture course. Probably if you told them you were taking an information architecture course, they'd be like, say what? They would have no idea what you're talking about. But it's become increasingly important. And some of the reading and video watching that you're going to do this way really speaks to why information architecture has become a field in and of itself. You will apply concepts of information architecture to develop planning documents for interactive media. You will document interactive media user personas and scenarios. You will develop paper prototypes and create designs for interactive digital media pieces via an iterative process. Iterative means that it's a process where you do some work, you go back, you look at it, you reflect, you make changes, and that's kind of how you do projects generally in most of the classes that you take. You get critique, you get feedback, and then you think about that feedback and you make some changes. Which includes user testing, evaluating, reflecting, and revising. Because this course is just 8 weeks, it's important that you share new work with the class each week. So I'm expecting you to bring work to class every week. You're going to have homework every week. So there's a lot of reading involved, and there are going to be 2 main projects. We'll get to all of that in just a second. So demonstrating your process is imperative. Don't destroy any of your sketches as you're going through these things. Keep everything that you do. So keep your sketches, don't use lined paper, use white paper. Maybe draw with whatever you like to draw with, because, you don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be good at drawing. but just get your ideas out on paper. And that story of your process can be very powerful, especially if you're interviewing for a job and they say, well, how did you come up with this idea? Or where did this idea come from? And you display these 20 sketches and you're like, then I was thinking this, and then I was thinking that, and that becomes a really powerful piece to show your whole thinking process. So keep a notebook for this class. I should have put it on here, but keep a notebook. It doesn't have to be fancy, but just something with white paper and a favorite drawing implement to get your ideas on paper. So our in-person meeting times will be dedicated to critiques after today. Come prepared and be ready to participate. So you're going to have 8 quizzes, so there's a quiz scheduled for each week. You will have 8 weeks of discussion questions that you'll be responding to via Canvas. I'm asking you to create a glossary of terms, and I'll explain that. That's 2% of your grade, so it's not a huge part of your grade, but I think it'll be helpful. And Project 1 and Project 2, these are more like visual projects where there's going to be graphics and sketches and tables and all of these things, and I'll tell you what those are going to be in a minute. And then your participation in critiques and your work process is counting for 10% of your grade. So even if ultimately you get an A on Project 1, if you haven't participated in any critiques and you show up with a final project that's beautiful, your score down in this part right here is going to be pretty crappy. Okay? So what are your questions so far? Nothing? Okay. So let's go to modules. Oh, I don't have a module set up yet. Dang it. Well, there should be a week 1 module. I think I started to create one. So let's just build it as I'm talking here. I'm going to edit the week 1 module. So for this week, what I would like you to do maybe, yeah, okay, I have to add some things to the module. Oh, I already did add things to the module. So I want you to do the week 1 reading and watching, and I want you to start on Project 1 and start on the glossary of terms. So I'm going to add these items. Huh? I'll get to it, Zach. Yes, hold on a second. Nothing you'll have to buy. I'm going to make PDFs of everything just because I don't want, I'm building so much of this on the fly. I've already identified 4 different books that I'm pulling readings from and information from, so I'm going to supply you with PDFs of everything. Once this course settle out and I can figure out what works, what doesn't work, then I think maybe next term I'll be like, you know what, don't use that book. You guys are kind of guinea pigs. I apologize. And also in week 1, I am going to add a quiz, which is the week 1 quiz add item. Okay? So that is your week 1 module, and let's publish it. Okay. Now we should be able to see it. Hopefully. You guys see week 1 as a module? Okay, good. So each week I'm going to be giving you some reading and watching assignments. So for week 1, your reading and watching assignment is to read chapters 1 to 3 in Pervasive Information Architecture provided for you under the Files area. So if you go to Files, there will be a PDF under there. Not right now because the work study student is working on it right now. And hopefully they will make the PDF in such a way that things aren't all cut off and I had to request. Can I make a special request? Will you please just make sure all of the content ends up on the PDF? So it will be there very soon. And then I'd like you to watch this 20-minute video that's on YouTube right there. All of the questions in the quiz are going to be based on this document. I mean, the document and the video. Okay, I don't want to say too much about it, but I think you're gonna enjoy learning about this. I have to give you a little bit of warning. This particular book, Pervasive Information Architecture, is very theoretical, and not all of your readings will be this theoretical. So it's really big and abstract kind of ideas. So if you're feeling like, I have no idea how this pertains to what we're learning, this is really big and broad, don't worry about it yet. Just get what you can out of it and, try to pay attention to the terms that they're defining, some of the big ideas. So I'm finding this after I got 3 chapters into it. So go ahead, read it, take it for what it's worth. We'll be giving you some readings that are very practical and applied in addition to this, so don't panic. Okay, back to the week 1 module. The quiz is only going to be active for the current week. So I believe I have the quiz expire. Oh wait, let me edit the quiz. I believe I have the quiz expire shortly before the class begins. So when you come, it won't be available anymore once you come to class next week. So you need to do it before you come to class. Let me just make sure that that's actually correct. It's due Monday night, but I'll edit it so it's due at 1 o'clock on, so we'll make it due on Tuesday the 24th at 1 p.m. So that would be, I think, 8 o'clock for our Vienna friend. Available, okay, and it's available until the 24th at 1 p.m. So you should be able to see that quiz right now, and once the readings are posted, you will be able to take the quiz whenever you want. Obviously, it's open book, but you only have, you have an hour to do it. So make sure you do the reading. Okay, back to the modules. The other assignment, as I was going through all of this reading, information architecture is a discipline in and of itself, and you're going to start learning about how this discipline emerged and different thoughts about what it actually is. And there are so many buzzwords and terms associated with the field of information architecture. And these are crucial that you know what they mean so that when you're critiquing other work or that you go into a job and you're talking about interactive media, you're using the right terminology to discuss these things. So I came up with this idea of creating an evolving glossary of terms. Now, had I taught this class semester and many semesters prior, I would have the entire list ready for you. But right now, this is just this is going to be an evolving list of terms that I'll be adding to throughout the semester. So what I would suggest is just taking this list and copying and pasting it into an Excel document. And I say Excel because Excel is actually a database, and we're going to be talking a lot about databases in this class. And part of me thought, well, maybe we'll be doing something in terms of some kind of an assignment with this data. So I thought that it would make sense to have it in Excel. So the directions say, create a glossary of terms based on concepts used in information architecture. The glossary will be due at the end of the term, and the terms you are to define will grow over the semester. I use term in 2 different ways in one sentence. At the end of spring 2. It is suggested that you create this glossary in Excel or like Google Docs, a spreadsheet, some kind of a spreadsheet, with your first column as the term and the second as the definition. We may use the resulting database for an in-class activity. So you can get these definitions from the reading that you do and from the videos that you watch, or you may just Google them. I mean, you'll be getting them, but the important thing is to know what they mean. Maybe the final quiz will be on the glossary of terms. I'm just not sure yet. But let's try it. Okay, so this doesn't have a due date. It's due at, it says it's available until March 16th. Oh, it's not. We need to edit that. It's due today. It is due May 8th, and it's available from March 16th to the end of the semester, which is around May 8th. We'll say the 9th. Done. Do you guys have any questions about that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so your first, let's go back to the modules and look at week 1. Your first project is going to be a website redesign. And when we talk, remember what I said earlier is that it's not really focused on the visual aspects of the website redesign at this point. We're thinking big and broader and structurally about what could be problematic about this particular website. So there's going to be a few phases in this project, and because, once again, this is the first time I'm teaching it, I'm only really rolling out the first phase of the project. I need to think about this a little bit more, and I'll tell you what you need to do on a week-by-week basis. So your assignment is to propose a redesign of an existing website based on your assessment of its effectiveness. The assignment objectives are to produce user scenarios, restructure a site's information architecture, create a competitive analysis, and create wireframes to better lay out the site pages based on your findings. Don't worry if you don't know what all that means right yet. The due dates, there'll be different due dates for each week, but right now I just have week 2 right there because that's what's due next week. So what I want you to create for next week is the existing information architecture diagram plus a user scenarios document. In the interest of time and being efficient, because we're trying to get in critiquing everybody's work, as well as communicating with someone who's in another country, please have all of your work ready to be critiqued as a PDF file. And I would suggest you can upload it under week 1. So I can be logged into Canvas and I can pull everybody's PDF file right from here. So I'll stay logged in at the main computer, and as we're looking in the PDF file, and then I think I'll be videoing or something, capturing you presenting your work somehow. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do this completely, but I have a week to figure that out, right? So everything should be in one PDF, and go ahead and submit it to Canvas under assignment 1. So in Canvas you can do resubmissions. This will be your PDF document for project 1. But that PDF document is most likely going to change between next week and when it's finally due. So you can just resubmit, 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 and when you finally get your final grade, it'll be on your whatever your last submission was. Okay, so let me explain what this is. You're going to choose a website and define its objective. Begin by choosing a website that is comprised of at least 25 pages and fewer than 100 pages. This website should not be an e-commerce site, or its primary function should not be e-commerce, since the e-commerce process is fairly prescribed. Write a statement about its objective. So the reason we're going to be looking at the structure of the information presented in the site. If the site's main objective is just to sell product, then we don't really have a lot of say in the structure, right? E-commerce sites tend to have a certain structure in which they work. You go to them, you can either browse or search, then you check out, and then that's a pretty prescribed structure. But if we're looking at a university website, if you're looking at like the YMCA of St. Louis, or you're looking at, I think of nonprofits as an example because they're not e-commerce, but you guys will probably think of other ideas. A museum website, things that have, they're showing a lot of information, but they're not necessarily, their primary function isn't to sell product, because we want to have all of those different components of information to play with so you can organize it and restructure it, right? Then I want you to diagram the current information architecture. Explore the structure of the site. Diagram the entire site in the form of a flowchart. And I know you guys are all familiar with flowcharts, right? Start by sketching out the structure of the site. Just do it on paper because you're going to be scratching things out and it's going to be messy, and you just want to kind of look at it, draw things in, and make it as quick and simple as possible. So start by sketching out the structure of the site, then formalize your diagram using a graphics or a flowcharting program. So you could diagram the structure in Adobe Illustrator, or there are other free flowcharting programs. And actually, I should list some of those resources on here in case you want to explore them. Yeah, Zach? Okay. How do I mean by how many pages? Right. And it's kind of funky because websites, let me look at something else. Well, let's look at the Magic House in St. Louis. Okay, if we look at the Magic House, we can see that there is a home page. This is the home page. there's going to be an About Us, Support Us, Contact Us, Museum Shop, Reservations. And then we also have access to Plan Your Visit, all of these things underneath here, Exhibits, all these things underneath here. So I would call all of these pages, right? So when I go to About Us, I see some submenus here. We've got Mission and History, which is where it landed us. So that's synonymous with the landing page for About Us. Then we have Community Involvement, Board, Committees, and Staff, Annual. So that's, I would say this site is a great site because it's not too huge, but it has at least 25 pages worth of information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't count, like these are obviously all links to their social media profiles, but those are external, so I would not count those in your 25 pages. Okay, so diagram the entire site in the form of a flowchart. If you wanted to do it in outline format too, that's fine. Just make sure it looks neat. Do you know what I mean? So instead of, let's see if I can show you an example of that. Something like this to show the relationship of pages and subpages.
So it's going to have like the main page and like submenus under it. Files on your computer for main one. I know, I'm just trying to figure out how I organize it all.
Yes, so I would say home page and then About Us and then underneath About Us. And then you may want to indicate that About Us was actually the same as this lower level page right here when we were looking at the Magic House example. Right, but also you may want to show the relationships too. From the home page, I can go right into, oh. Holy cow, well that's no good. But theoretically, if I would have, you want to show the paths as well. So, for example, from the home page, if I can go right to a specific current exhibit, this is taking me to the China exhibit. No, it's not. They've got bigger problems than their structure. But if there's a link from the home page to this China exhibit, I could probably also get there by going from home to exhibits to new and special exhibits, and there I am right there. So the reason why I suggest doing it graphically is because you can describe all of these different paths to the different bits of information. Do you get what I mean? That's why we're doing critiques. You just do. Because Illustrator is sure. Some people like the control, like you have the ultimate freedom in Illustrator, and sometimes flowcharting software can be kind of limiting in terms of how you design your boxes and whatever. I kind of thought that when I was doing websites, I was like, I had a teacher in graduate school who really made these beautiful site maps. They were gorgeous. They were graphical and lovely, color-coded. Just they were a work of art in and of itself. And my feeling was like, why are you putting all of that effort into the information architecture? And he was just appalled. I mean, this is like an old school, Rhode Island School of Design professor. And he's like, when we work with clients and they see this beautiful information architecture about what we're going to build for them, they get really pumped about it. And he would actually take the time to have the information architecture printed in the form of a poster and deliver this to the client. And the clients would get this beautiful poster of this cool structure, you know, all very artistically done and real designy, you know, and the client would put it up on their wall, and that got the client to buy into the project and be really excited about it. Like, look at what this company is going to do for us, and isn't this really cool? And everybody would kind of weigh in on it. And so this is part of your presentation as a creative person. You want to make a beautiful representation of what you're going to be building for someone. So does that answer your question about why you would use Illustrator? Is because you want to have that ultimate control about the look and feel of your architecture diagram. So, like, for example, let me just show you. I'm going to show you a really simple site architecture if I can find it. I have to show you my screen so it captures all of this. Okay, here's an example of a site architecture, something that I happen to make in Illustrator. And the reason why I did it in Illustrator is because I wanted to be able to color code it to designate different types of information in different types of pages. And the color coding was in the rendering was done slightly different for different sections because it was used as a communication tool to specify how pages were set up in the WordPress architecture. So it has sort of a different function, but you can see like it really clearly explains the structure of the site. Yeah. Yeah. If you can make it look halfway decent. Yeah. Yeah, you can use Visio. Let me see if I can show you another one. I don't know where that is. Sorry, I have some. Oh. If you took, I mean, these are more of my diagrams of how sites were going to work. This is kind of a hybrid diagram that explains kind of like wireframes with user scenarios built in. So this was a system that I developed. It's a web-based application, and it's showing a scenario. This is one or more buyer buying from multiple stores but shipping to one location. So I was trying to picture how the system would be used in different scenarios. And I created a bunch of them. Here's scenario 2, one or more buyers buying from multiple stores but shipping to different locations. And in the process of creating these, I realized that certain functions weren't going to be that different when I thought about all the different possible user scenarios. And that really helped me direct me as I was building the application. And this is another scenario too. It got a little bit more complex. And I think these look pretty decent. And this was a project that I worked on with like solo. So it's important to create these diagrams so you can keep track of what you're doing when you go into the development phase if you're doing design and development, or to communicate how things need to work if you're working with a designer or you're working with a programmer. You have to have these kinds of planning documents. Now this is something I didn't create, but this is a site architecture. It's 10 years old, so this is kind of an old document. This is a 26-page site architecture document, which talks about issues, the situation analysis. It's getting into even bigger, deeper theoretical levels than what the structure of the site is going to be. Content channels, service and support areas, single sign-on. And now we get into actual architecture itself. The color coding, the relationship of pages to one another, notes. This was created, I think, in InDesign. Why do you do it in InDesign and not like a canned program that does kind of like site maps? Well, it's all about the look and feel and about the presentation and about having the control to be able to render it the way you want it to look. Yeah. And in my experience, when I worked on teams building these kinds of sites, when you go to meetings to talk about what's going on with the project, you carry this book with you, and you've got your notes on it, you cross pages out, and you just got, like, everyone's on the, like, literally everyone's on the same page. It becomes a communication tool that you work with your team members on the project. So, obviously, I don't want you to create such a huge site that it use such a huge site as an example for your project that this becomes an overwhelming task. But I do want it to look nice because this is part of your portfolio. This is about, this is a site architecture that you're mapping out. The first draft doesn't have to be perfect. The important thing for next week is to get it, to capture it, and you can spend all semester revising it. It would be great by next week if you actually spend some time putting it into some kind of graphics application. If you're going to use Vario, what is it, or Visio, or you're going to use Illustrator, you're going to use InDesign, whatever you use is fine. I'll probably critique you on that. When you bring it next week, I'll be like, well, why is your line thickness thicker here and less thick here? Because it matters. The thickness of your line conveys importance of different sections and subsections. So take an attempt at it, bring something in, and then we'll talk about it. And what I want you to begin to see is how your visual choices are influencing the way we perceive the importance of certain types of information. So it'll be fun. Okay, so let's get back to the... so what I want you to do for next week, existing information architecture diagram. I think you guys know what that is. It'd be great if it was visual. In your attempt to make it look professional, and then we'll tear it apart. I'm just kidding. And then I want you to create a user scenarios document. What is a user scenarios document? I have a great example right here. So I'm calling it user scenarios, and I'm calling it user personas. It's actually user personas that partake in different scenarios. I should edit that. But here's an example right here. Let's take a look at that. This is a user scenarios document for a project that was done analyzing a university website. So they identified 3 different typical users. One is a current student. And they used some clip art imagery. You can bring in some image so we can visualize who that person is. A current student. Something about that current student. And then they came up with 3 different scenarios. What if they're trying to do this? How do you do it? What is the tasks and what steps do you take on the current website? Here's another scenario. Here's the question. Here are the tasks and here are the current steps. So they came up with 3 different scenarios. Here's the second user persona, the concerned high school senior parents. 3 different scenarios and associated questions, tasks, and user steps. Here's the third persona. Okay? Oh, they did 4 in this particular case. I'm only at, oh, they did 5. Huh. What do you know about that? I'm only asking you guys to do 3. To come up, think about your site. Who would the 3 different personas be? What would their tasks be? So 3 different user personas, 3 different scenarios for each persona. I would steal this model, use this model to do, it's a good model, take it, recreate it, and complete your assignment using this model. So that's all that I'm asking you to do for project 1. Do you guys have a question? Mm-hmm. So under here for project 1, it says week 2, existing information architecture. Here, let me try to make it clearer. Week 2, complete parts 1, 2, and 3 below. And I'll reiterate it. Choose website, define objective, diagram existing information architecture, and plus create user scenario document. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right. I would take an, yes, I would make an effort to get it into some kind of a graphics software, but it's not going to be due. The whole final thing is not going to be due until probably halfway through the 8-week term. I think I said that the due date here is April 14th. I think that's the 4th week of class, maybe the 5th week of class. So probably it'll be due the 5th week of class. I need to flush out the rest of this assignment so you have a sense for what the final deliverables will be. But I'm telling you that for sure the existing information architecture and the user personas will be part of the final deliverables. And your final deliverable will be one big old PDF. The reason why I say PDF is in Canvas, it's easy for me to sometimes certain file types don't open on very well in Canvas, and I can't dynamically put my comments in, and so it's very hard for me to give feedback on it. So, and if it's in one PDF, it'll be quick and easy for all of us to open and be able to share with our collaborator. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And if it's easier for you to work in Microsoft Word, you can save the PDF. Can you do that on your computer? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Brian. What if I'm what? Yeah, I would go a little bit outside of, like, it's tempting to do the Webster website or do something outside of your realm just to give some variety and interest to your portfolio, you know? There's not 25 pages in it. It's a mess. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so in Canvas, for you, if you look under assignments, here's project 1, and if you're a student, do you have some button here where it says submit, make submission, or something like that? So go under the assignment. Okay, so click on the assignment itself. Can you submit anything? No submission. I got to give you a submission online. File upload. Sorry, that's my fault. Now refresh your page and take a look at it again. And do you see a button that says submit? This glossary of terms, you're not going to have to submit anything for the reading and watching. For quiz 1, that's not really a submission, you just take the quiz. And for the glossary of terms, let me edit that so you'll be able to submit something there. But that's not done until the end of the semester. I mean, yeah, end of the date. This is online file upload. Okay. Any other questions? Since class is kind of a short critique, we're going to do a lot of work online. Oh, also, I forgot one thing. You're going to have weekly discussion questions. So I just have one for this week. There's only one discussion question I'm asking you to respond to. So go ahead and take a look at that. Sometimes the discussion questions I'll ask you to submit some kind of graphic or visual. Like I say, find an example of this or do that. JPEGs are the best way to add a visual to a discussion. So there's just one discussion question. I'm going to create a new discussion question that is just like general questions and open discussion. And that way you can put questions there. You can also respond to, this is probably the best place to have just a general discussion. I'll call this general discussion questions and answers. I'll just say, please submit any questions here. That should show up for you now under discussions. I usually, when I teach my online classes, I usually close certain discussions for comments. So like next week at this time when we meet, I will have closed this for comments. So it's important to keep up on and participate in the discussion during that current week. And we'll just consider our week Tuesday after class all the way through the next Tuesday. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop my recording.